Hi guys, I thought of doing a video tutorial on question number 4, intangible assets and impairment. So let's start this question. Okay, so you're given TimTom Limited, which is a GPS manufacturer. At 30th of June 2018, TimTom Limited reported the following assets in its statement of financial position. So you're given brand name of TimTom at 400,000, factory 1 million, machinery 1 million, land 1.6, inventories 500,000, goodwill 70,000, cash at bank 300,000. Okay, TimTom Limited assessed its impairment position at 30th of June 2018. The indicators suggested that an impairment loss was probable. TimTom Limited calculated the recoverable amount of the company to be 4.5 million at 30th of June 2019. Okay, part 1, you're asked to calculate the impairment loss. Now, how do you calculate the impairment loss? So impairment loss occurs when the recoverable amount is less than the carrying amount. Okay, so let's work out the carrying amount of this business, or carrying amount of assets of this business. So what you need to do is you need to add up all these assets, starting from the brand name, factory, machinery, land, inventories, goodwill, cash at bank. You work out the sum of these assets. So the sum of these assets equals to 4.87 million. And the recoverable amount is 4.5 million. Okay, so the carrying amount is 4.87 million, which is the sum of these figures. Okay, that's 4.87 million, and the recoverable amount is 4.5 million. Since the recoverable amount is less than the carrying amount, they recognize impairment loss. Okay, now how do you work out the impairment loss? It's a difference between the carrying amount and the recoverable amount. It's 370,000. Okay, so the next step is to assign this impairment loss on businesses' assets. Okay, now there are a few things you need to consider before assigning the impairment loss. Always remember, cash at bank does not impair. You do not impair cash at bank. Okay, so cash at bank must be excluded from the allocation of impairment loss. That's step number 1. Step number 2, we assume that inventories are carried out at the lower cost or the net realizable value. Yeah, so inventories are not impaired either. They're not subject to impairment for this question. We do not impair because we always assume that inventories are carried at low of cost or net realizable value, which means $370,000 of impairment loss is assigned on brand, factory, machinery, land, and goodwill. Okay, whenever we work out impairment, you must always reduce the goodwill amount first. Yeah, you must reduce goodwill first, which means you need to take out goodwill from this 370,000, and you're left with $300,000 of impairment loss to be allocated among brand, factory, machinery, and land. Okay, next step is to assign impairment loss of 300,000 on brand, factory, machinery, and land on a pro rata basis, which means we work out the proportion of brand over total assets, proportion of factory over total assets, proportion of machinery over total assets, and the proportion of land over total assets. Okay, so brand has a carrying amount of 400,000, and the total fair value of these assets is 4 million. which means the proportion of brand over total assets is 10%. Factory is 1 million, and the total fair value of assets is 4 million, which means the proportion of factory over total fair value is 25%, and the proportion of machinery over the total fair value is 25% as well. Proportion of land over total assets is 40%. Okay, and the next step in assigning $300,000 of impairment loss. So how much of this 300,000 is assigned on brand? We take 10% and you multiply 300,000. That gives you 30. How much is assigned on factory? We take 25%, multiply by 300,000. That's 75. Machinery, 75. 40% of the $300,000 impairment loss is assigned on land. That's what you see here. Okay, next we prepare the general journal entry to record impairment loss. So you debit impairment loss just like you debit depreciation. And then you credit accumulated amortization and impairment loss of brand, 30. And accumulated depreciation and impairment losses, factory, 75. Straight from here. Accumulated depreciation and impairment losses, machinery, 75. Accumulated impairment loss, land. Keep in mind, land does not depreciate, so you only account for accumulated impairment loss, 120. And goodwill has an indefinite useful life, which means goodwill is only subject to impairment. So you credit accumulated impairment loss, goodwill. That's 70,000. All right, guys, I guess that's it for this question. Thanks.